Welcome to the real world. My name is Cameron. Thank you so much for joining us on the Real World YouTube channel. We are so glad you've joined us. If you're a movie fan, you're in the right place. Make sure you hit the subscribe button, hit the like, make sure you leave a comment below, share this with your friends. We're all over social media, so all of those links are in the description below. This episode is a fun one. It is all about Indiana Jones. Thank you again for joining us here on the Real World YouTube channel. This episode, again, is all about Indiana Jones. We're going to talk every single Indiana Jones movie, including Dial of Destiny, which is in theaters right now. Joining me on this endeavor is Ben. How you doing, man?
Hey, Cameron, how's it going, man?
Doing great. Thanks for joining us. This is Ben's first time on the podcast. Been waiting for him to have him on for a while. He's a fellow movie nerd, I guess you could say.
It's about time, dude. It's about time.
Absolutely. So this should be a fun episode. As we usually do, we're going to kick things off with movie news. All right, kicking things off as we usually do with some movie news. There was quite a bit of news that dropped this week. Some really big news coming out of DC. We have our new Superman. His name is David Corenswet, and Rachel Brosnahan will be playing Lois Lane in James Gunn's Superman Legacy. This is scheduled to release in 2025. This is really the movie that's technically kicking off the new DC universe of movies. Obviously, highly anticipated to see who they'd pick. I don't really know anything about either of these actors, which I'm actually excited about. I'm glad they're going with relative unknowns for this role. I think that's kind of been the tradition of Superman throughout his history. And so... yeah, so I'm glad with these choices. I think they look the part. I haven't actually seen these actors do anything, so I'm curious to see how they're going to inhabit these roles. Ben, what are your thoughts on the new Superman and Lois?
Funny you should mention that, because I remember last week there was a rumor like, oh yeah, they're going to reveal who the next Superman's going to be. Meanwhile, I was thinking we wouldn't know until San Diego Comic-Con, because DC did announce they are going to have a panel, and James Gunn will probably be there, and I think they're going to reveal more than what was announced previously. But the announcement of David Corenswet, he probably got bullied in high school by that last name, Cornsweat.
Yeah.
Cornsweat.
Yeah. So he can relate to Clark in that way.
I've heard of him before. He actually was in that series Hollywood on Netflix.
Oh, okay.
And Lois Lane, that is Marvelous Miss Maisel, I believe, from Amazon Prime.
Oh, really?
Oh. Yeah, so haven't seen that much of the actors, but based off how they look, James Gunn definitely got it right.
Yeah, I agree.
And I'm so happy it's not, no offense, I love another contender for the role was Nicholas Hoult.
Yeah.
And as much as I like him, like he was in The Menu last year, great in The Menu, great chemistry with Anya Taylor-Joy and Ralph Fiennes.
Yeah.
He doesn't look like Superman to me.
Yeah.
And I heard he also auditioned for Matt Reeves' The Batman. He was one of the liner-ups besides Robert Pattinson. So if it wasn't going to be Robert Pattinson, it possibly could have been Nicholas Hoult. And I'm happy Pattinson took the job because he ended up delivering a very traumatic version of Bruce Wayne.
Yes.
A more emo.
Definitely right.
Too.
Yeah. Awesome. Well, a little bit more of potential casting for this movie. The rumor is Bill and Alexander Skarsgård, two brothers, are up for the role of Lex Luthor, which would be very interesting. Two very different actors. I mean, Alexander Skarsgård, I think he's like 6'4", so he's like the same height as our new Superman. And so that would be interesting to have a physically imposing Lex Luthor. Bill, of course, he's known for playing kind of creepy villainous roles, so I think he could fit too. Interested to see what they end up doing with that. We don't know actually who the villain, if it is Lex is the only villain, or if there's going to be another villain or what, but I'm very curious to see what they end up doing there.
I'm open for there to be a Lex Luthor, but I'm actually hoping if Lex Luthor is involved, he's not the central focus. It should be another villain. Then Lex comes in being like, oh, I could use this to take down Superman. Maybe I will, maybe I won't, So
yeah, I agree.
I like to see. So
yeah, I want to see a new villain. There's so many Superman villains we haven't seen yet on screen. Brainiac being one of them.
Brainiac. Brainiac and Lobo would be cool choices.
Lobo, Metallo, Parasite. There's so many great characters in his rogues gallery. So yeah, I'm very curious to see what they end up doing with that. But again, that is not out until 2025, so we've got a long ways to go. Let's move on to our next story, which is staying in the realm of DC. They announced that they are releasing a documentary, a 3-part documentary called Super Powered. This is going to be dropping on Max July 20th. So just a couple weeks away. It's going to be about the origin of DC Comics and the whole history of DC Comics and all these characters and where they came from and that kind of thing. So as a comic book fan, I'm very much looking forward to that. Kind of in the same realm, Disney Plus just released a similar documentary on Marvel's Stan Lee, the history of his life, where he came from, the origins of Marvel Comics and a lot of these superheroes that are so well known now, which I did get to watch and I did enjoy. So yeah, be on the lookout for those.
I still haven't watched it, dude.
I
saw it, but my mind was still on Indiana Jones. I just wanted to watch nothing but Indiana Jones.
I hear you. All right, moving on to our next story, Tron 3, which we haven't heard a lot about in a while. Last we heard Jared Leto was attached, and he's still attached. And now another actor has joined the cast, an actor by the name of Evan Peters, who, of course, many will know as Quicksilver from X-Men Days of Future Past. He's a fascinating actor. He's done a lot of interesting work, and he has joined the cast of Tron 3, which currently I don't think has a director yet or anything, but they're obviously working towards something. So as a Tron fan, I'm curious to see what they do with it. I was actually a really big fan of Legacy and was curious to see how they would continue the story after that. But yeah, I'm just kind of interested to see, who joins the project and when we get a release date and, what the kind of story they're going to tell is, because there's obviously a lot you can explore there. But what are your thoughts on Evan Peters and Jared Leto in the next Tron?
I didn't even know they were making another Tron, to be honest with you. I've seen the first Tron film. It was good, outdated.
Yeah.
It's a very outdated film, but it's fun.
Yeah.
Tron Legacy was interesting.
Yeah.
It kind of, I don't want to compare, but how Blade Runner didn't need a sequel, yet we got Blade Runner 2049, and it actually added something really neat.
Yes.
Aesthetic and just dramatic wise. That's how I feel about Tron Legacy.
Yeah.
I'm not saying that they're equal part. Like Blade Runner 2049, I think is a better film, but in terms of like legacy sequels,
yeah,
they channel a similar energy.
Right. Yeah, I hear you for sure. Yeah, definitely. So yeah, so we'll have to keep our eyes on that one. Another sequel that is now started filming. It just started filming this week. It is Mortal Kombat 2. So this is the sequel to the recent Mortal Kombat reboot. And this one, of course, is going to introduce Carl Urban as Johnny Cage. Mortal Kombat fans, I know, are excited to get this, character that is, one of the most popular characters in the video games, in the movies, and especially being played by such a great actor. I'm very curious. I actually had quite a bit of fun with that newer Mortal Kombat. The ones from the 90s I think are awful, but the newer one was pretty fun. I thought it was a cool action movie. So what are your thoughts? Did you get to see that one or no?
I'm familiar with the games. I have friends who are big fans of Mortal Kombat and they keep begging me to play. But I still haven't had the chance to play because I've been busy with playing a lot of story-driven games.
Yeah.
I'm the type of gamer, like I like Uncharted. I love The Last of Us.
Yeah.
I love the Lego games. The Lego games are so much fun. And I love Mario. I love Batman the Arkham trilogy. Yeah. That is probably my favorite interpretation of Batman I've ever seen, like beyond just like comic books animated, like the Arkham series. I love the Arkham series.
Yeah.
But Mortal Kombat, well, based off the trailers for the first Mortal Kombat, I still have not seen that movie. It's on Max, I believe. Last time I checked, it looks cool.
Yeah.
I'll probably get around to watching it one of these days, but I had no idea they were making a sequel. But I'm sure the fans are excited that there's going to be a sequel because they only make sequels for the fans these days, not really the general audience. So
yeah, exactly.
Let's see if this makes money.
Yep. We'll have to wait and see. Okay, next story. Disney, for their 100th anniversary this year, is bringing back 8 films to theaters. These films are some of my favorites, so I'm really excited for a lot of these. So all summer, actually all the way through October, we'll be getting these releases. So the first one that they're releasing this week, July 7th, it starts its run. Pirates of the Caribbean, The Curse of the Black Pearl will be in theaters all the way through July 20th. Then on July 21st, they're going to release the original Toy Story back into theaters. That'll run through August 3rd. Then on August 4th, we're getting a re-release of Frozen. That will run all the way through August 17th. And then on August 18th, we're getting Beauty and the Beast back in theaters through August 31st. Then on September 1st, they will start showing The Incredibles all the way through September 14th. Then Coco will start a run starting September 15th, running through the 28th. And then on September 29th, we're getting my all-time favorite Disney film, The Lion King, back in theaters. Super excited for that one.
That is my favorite Disney movie too, man. I love The Lion King.
It's the best. That's going to run all the way through October 12th. And then the final film running October 13th through 26th is Moana. So all of these films, now you can get tickets for on fandango.com. Check them out for details. Check your local theaters if they're playing these. But I thought that was a cool idea for the 100th anniversary. They needed to do something like this. And I think this is a good way to go.
Yeah, it is a good way to go. I thought Disney already celebrated all they wanted to do with their 100th anniversary. But if they want to re-release classics back to the big screen, I think they have a good list.
Yeah, I agree.
A bit typical in some areas like Frozen. Like, of course, they're going to do Frozen. But hearing about Pirates of the Caribbean, the first one, which is the best one, in my opinion, and Incredibles and The Lion King. Man, it makes me want to go see them now.
I know, right?
I already got them on DVD and Disney Plus, but to see that on the big screen, it's tempting.
I know. That would be a lot of fun. So yeah, check those out. Let us know if you're going to go see any of those back in theaters. Last couple things for movie news we have here. A big trailer dropped this week, and that was Dune Part 2, the next film from Denis Villeneuve. Man, this is like a 3-minute trailer. There's tons of stuff going on here. Lots of big action, lots of character stuff going on. Just what a spectacular looking movie. Just the visuals, the cinematography here is stunning. The effects are seamless, a great ensemble cast. I mean, what more could you want as a fan of cinema? This, the first Dune I just was blown away by it. So I am ecstatic that we're getting this later this year. So what did you think about this new trailer? Did you get to watch it?
I did. I watched it yesterday, and I think it is hands down the best movie trailer I've seen this year.
Yeah.
Besides Indiana Jones. I did like the last trailer for Indiana Jones. That really hyped me up.
Yeah.
But Part 2, I'm so excited for November.
Yes.
I wish it was November now.
I know.
I can't believe I'm saying that because summer has just begun and I have vacation planned and all I'm thinking about now is just seeing Dune Part 2 in November. So
yeah, I know.
I'm excited. Villeneuve, is that his name?
Yep.
Who did Blade Runner 2049. He did such an incredible job with the first film.
Yeah.
And he made it worthy of the big screen. There's so many movies nowadays that I think are not necessarily worthy of the big screen. They should just be sent to just streaming and streaming alone. Like, for example, that movie Renfield with Nicolas Cage and Nicholas Hoult?
Yeah.
It was okay, but not for the big screen. It's not a big screen movie. A big screen movie is like anything from Villeneuve, Christopher Nolan. Everything that Christopher Nolan's made is worthy of the big screen.
Oh, yeah.
Martin Scorsese, Steven Spielberg. I don't think Steven Spielberg has made a single movie that I would say, nah, just put it on streaming. I want to see that movie. So,
yeah.
There's so much craftsmanship with those filmmakers. And I feel like nowadays with the big Hollywood films outside of the greats and the masters, they're not thinking about craft. They're only thinking about putting in political messages and stale camera work. It's not cinema worthy. Yeah. I don't want to be like Martin Scorsese saying, nah, it's a theme park picture. It's not cinema. I'll fight him on the last two Avengers films because I thought, no, those are great. Sure. You can fight me. But he promises it's going to be more action-packed, less world exposition. I was fine with the world building. I think you definitely need it in order to
Yeah.
get proper execution. So hopefully Doom Part 2 pays everything off.
Yes, exactly. That's what I'm waiting for, is the big payoff, the big finale to this epic two-part sci-fi extravaganza. It's gonna be great. All right, last thing is a couple of movie anniversaries I wanted to talk about. One movie, and I'm curious to get your thoughts on these, because these are both movies that I really like. And I know one of them's a little more divisive than the other one. The other one's kind of underrated, I feel like, but celebrating its 10th anniversary this week. And I remember seeing this in theaters. I had a lot of fun with it, and I've watched it a number of times since. It's The Lone Ranger, Disney's Lone Ranger with Armie Hammer and Johnny Depp. This is a movie, now it's 10 years old already, which is crazy to think about. But I just feel like it's a one of those big budget, it's Gore Verbinski who did the Pirates movies. And it's like one of those super just kind of fun, turn your brain off action extravaganzas that happens to be set in the Old West. And I'm a big fan of Westerns. So again, I have a lot of fun with it. So I didn't know, what do you think of Lone Ranger?
I remember enjoying it
Yeah.
when I went to go see it at the movies.
Okay.
But afterwards, rewatching it again, there's a lot of bonker moments
Yes.
with that movie.
Yes.
But I still have a blast.
The other movie celebrating anniversary, 20th anniversary, is another classic adventure movie. It's Sinbad, Legend of the Seven Seas, the DreamWorks animated movie starring Brad Pitt and Catherine Zeta-Jones. Again, it's a film that I feel like have you not seen this?
I have not seen Sinbad, actually.
Okay. This is really fun. I would highly recommend checking it out. It's very much in the vein of Pirates of the Caribbean, kind of swashbuckling adventure film. It's really good. The voice cast, like I said, Brad Pitt, Catherine Zeta-Jones, really, Joseph Fiennes is in there too. So really, really good. It's one of the earlier DreamWorks movies. It came out in 2003. So yeah, it's really, really fun though. Really fast paced, just a funny, enjoyable, really good visuals. The animation's great. I miss 2D animation. I just feel like there's something really special about it. So yeah, I definitely recommend.
I miss that format so much.
Yeah, me too.
Don't get me wrong, I like computer animated films, but I'm missing I'm missing 2D and stop motion animation. Not saying that we're not getting it, but I wish we had more of 2D and stop motion animated projects out there.
Yes, I totally agree. Totally agree. Hopefully, Guillermo del Toro is going to bring it back. He made his great Pinocchio movie, and he's working on another one, so that should be fun.
Masterpiece. One of the best films of last year, Guillermo del Toro's Pinocchio, hands down.
Totally agree. Yep, definitely. Well, let's go ahead and jump into Indy news. First thing is we want to talk about the box office. It's projected to earn 60 million this weekend over the 3 days. Now, we've of course got a holiday coming up on Tuesday, so we're not sure how much it's going to make for the full weekend. But it's at 60 million right now. It's a little lower than projections. I think, the mixed reviews had a lot to do with that. But that's where it's sitting. Across the Spider-Verse surpassed 600 million at the box office this weekend, which is huge. So a lot of people are highly anticipating the third and final entry of that trilogy, which is supposed to come out next year. And then a bit of a surprise, this movie came out of nowhere. It's from DreamWorks Animation, which is a pretty big studio. It's called Ruby Gillman Teenage Kraken. I didn't even know about this movie. I didn't know it was releasing, but it only made 5 million, making it the lowest ever for a DreamWorks animated film, which is, again, not surprising because I haven't seen any marketing about this movie at all. I don't know what they were thinking, what happened there, but yeah, that's kind of how the box office shook out this weekend. All right, folks, well, that's it for movie news. Now it's time to break down all of the Indiana Jones movies. We're going to review each of these films. We're going to give our ranking at the end, so that should be a lot of fun. Indiana Jones, for me, I grew up watching this trilogy on loop. I mean, I feel like they were always playing at my house. My dad was a huge fan. My mom was a huge fan. We watched these all the time, right along with the Star Wars trilogy. So I had these on VHS, grew up with them. It's why many might assume that it was kind of inevitable that these movies would be some of my favorites. That Harrison Ford would be my favorite actor, Spielberg would be my favorite director. It's kind of like, when you grow up with something like that, I feel like it really, it stays with you in a certain way. It's kind of your first big, movie experiences in that way. So You know, the thing is, there's a lot of, you know, movies from my childhood that I've revisited that don't hold up very well at all. But these do, you know, these I can rewatch even as an adult and just get so much out of them just because they're so well made. You know, you can tell the people behind the scenes really were passionate about them. We're really having fun making them. I think that really comes through on screen. And so, you know, I think these, you know, endure more even than the adventure serials from the 30s and 40s and they're based on, is because, you know, many imitators have come along and tried to kind of replicate the Indy formula, and most of them fail. I really feel that that's, again, because not only the talent involved behind the scenes, you know, Spielberg, Ford, John Williams, George Lucas, you know, all of these, Ben Burt, you know, all these incredible filmmakers behind the scenes that do whatever they do at an expert level. But it's also because I feel like this character, he's not just your typical kind of generic treasure hunter guy. He really has layers and depth to him that I think can be kind of subtle, but is definitely there in all the films if you really pay attention. He's got a character arc kind of over all the movies and even in just the individual films themselves, that I think really sets him apart. You know, he's got a strong personality, and you know, he's kind of, I consider him the ultimate movie hero because he's the brain and the brawn, right? He's like a super intelligent professor, and he's also a really tough guy that can kind of get into fights and, you know, get into all these chases and do all this incredible, you know, stuff physically as well as mentally. So I feel like that sets him apart. He really takes risks. He fights evil. He never gives up. I feel like that's one of his major attributes as a character. And so that's what makes him my favorite character in movies and maybe in all of fiction. I mean, I'm a huge fan. I've got the novelizations of all three of the original films that I own. I own a ton of these comic books that I've collected over the years. The Indiana Jones comics are tons of fun. So I'm a massive fan of this, you know, this character and this franchise. I finally, because I couldn't hardly find them, they were hard to find, I finally started watching the Young Indiana Jones series on Disney Plus, which has been a ton of fun too, to get into that and his whole history and that whole thing. So anyways, that's kind of my history with Indy. Ben, why don't you give us your kind of you know, history with this character, how he was introduced to you and what he means to you?
The first thing I got into, from what I can remember, was definitely Star Wars in terms of Lucasfilm. And then, yeah, I was with my family at the time. We went to MGM Studios, now Hollywood Studios, and went on the Great Movie Ride, which is closed now. Yeah. I'm never going to forgive Disney for that. But I remember while we were waiting in line in the Chinese theater section, they were showing all these trailers to all these well-known movies like The Wizard of Oz, Alien, Fantasia, and then they showed the trailer for Raiders of the Lost Ark. My eyes widened. I remember my sisters were very curious what this movie was, and Dad smiled. He smiled seeing that. I mean, I had no idea why he was smiling. Like, what is this movie? So a few days pass, and the next thing I know, we are, for the first time, watching Raiders of the Lost Ark on VHS. And boy, what an experience.
Yeah.
I remember like immediately falling. I tried to dress up like Indiana Jones. I failed, but I tried to dress up like Indiana Jones because he was like the model, you know? He was like the model you look up to. You wanted to be Indiana Jones after watching Raiders of the Lost Ark. Everything he does, from punching Nazis to grabbing the artifact to getting the girl, you wanted to be Indiana Jones. And so going into the franchise, the next movie I watched after Raiders was Last Crusade because Temple of Doom was far too dark for me at the time. I was 6 or 7 years old, and my dad kept saying, no, too dark. And Mom kept saying, no, too dark. So give it like 2-3 years later. It was before Kingdom of the Crystal Skull came out. I finally watched Temple of Doom and following Kingdom of the Crystal Skull. And then yesterday, because my dad got me into Indiana Jones, I took him to see Dial of Destiny. So
Nice.
I kind of bookended a journey that started with looking at my dad smiling at the Raiders of the Lost Ark trailer and ended it with us seeing Dial of Destiny.
Wow, so that is an awesome story. That's great. That's great stuff. I appreciate you sharing that. All right, guys, here it is. We're going to kick off our reviews of each movie with Raiders of the Lost Ark. This film was released on June 12th, 1981, had a budget of $20 million. ended up grossing $389 million worldwide, has a runtime of 1 hour and 55 minutes. I guess I'll, just kind of show my hand a little bit here. It's my favorite movie ever made. It is like, just a perfect movie on every level. This movie, it does everything you could want in a action adventure film. Has great characters, great locations, great sets, incredible chase sequences, fight scenes, special effects, music. I mean, all of it is just fantastic. I really like the opening of this movie. It's kind of a movie unto itself. I like that we start with Indy on another adventure. So it's kind of like Star Wars in that way. You just kind of come into this story in the middle of a story. And I really, really like that whole, of course, the iconic boulder chase and the whole deal is just great. Great introduction to Indy. He's very much got that heroic silhouette that you want your hero to have, very iconic and recognizable. It features some great exposition. It does what Spielberg does so well, which is visual storytelling, which is what movies are all about. Specifically in the lecture hall, when they're first explaining to Indy what's going on, that they need to go get this Ark before the Nazis do. And he's kind of drawing it on a chalkboard and talking to them about it, and opens up the Bible and shows them the picture. It's just really good visual storytelling on every level. The cast here is so good. Of course, Tom Selleck was originally supposed to play the role, but couldn't due to contract with CBS and Magnum PI. He had to make another season of that show. But I'm glad it was Ford, because I feel like he really, just brings gravitas to it in a way that some actors wouldn't. Yet he brings the kind of wry, kind of charming, witty kind of sensibility to it. A little kind of a wink and a nod to the audience in some ways, but it's not too much there. It's still, he's very much in the world and in the character, but I just feel like he brings that good balance of kind of drama and humor and everything. Marion, of course, played wonderfully by Karen Allen, who's just as tough as Indy, and they have this past, and I think they play so well off each other. They have great chemistry. Denholm Elliott, I wanted to bring up because he's only in this movie for a few minutes. Really, he's not in it a lot, but again, he brings a lot of gravitas to his role, and the exposition he gives is just so well delivered. Also, just a very likable character that I think works very well. John Rhys Davies as Sala is just so much fun. I love the stuff with him because he had so much personality and life to the movie just when it needs it, and he'll kind of sing these big songs, and it just adds a lot of personality that I really like. These little character moments that he has are really good. Of course, our villains, we've got some great villains. The Nazis are here. We've got Ronald Lacey playing Tote, who's really creepy and kind of chasing Indy down. And of course, we have Paul Freeman as Rene Belloc, who's kind of this rival French archaeologist, who's kind of the as he says, the shadowy reflection of Indiana Jones himself, that I think he does a great job with that role as well. So much in this that I like. I could talk about it all day. The truck chase, I'll just mention, is to me an all-time great action sequence. Thrilling. You're just on the edge of your seat that whole time. And I like that. One thing that I really like about Indy is that he's a very vulnerable hero. He gets beat up a lot. He takes a lot of punches. He takes gunshots. He's got to face his greatest fear, snakes. I like all that stuff. Again, that just adds to the character and makes him feel so much more real and relatable. So yeah, just a great film. Douglas Slocum's cinematography is just absolutely stunning. That sunset scene is just one of the best shots in all of movies. Has a great ending too, with both the scene in Washington and the warehouse. Just some really great stuff. I'll mention again Ben Burtt and his sound design. I feel like the punches in this movie are like the best punches ever. They're so impactful, and that sound that they make is just so memorable. It's just really, really fun. Of course, I got to mention John Williams too, because his music, without that, Spielberg often says, without John Williams' music, my movies are never complete until they have his music put in, because they just add so much to every scene. The Raiders March, Marion's theme, all of it just is iconic and memorable, and helps tell the story and supports the film in such a big way. So that's me kind of trying to wrap up my thoughts on this big movie that I've watched innumerable times. Ben, give us your thoughts on Raiders of the Lost Ark.
I would have to agree with you. I think Raiders of the Lost Ark is my favorite movie of all time, as
Awesome.
well as my dad's favorite movie of all time. And I think it's because it has a brilliant direction by Steven Spielberg, a memorable screenplay by Lawrence Kasdan, who also wrote the screenplay to my favorite Star Wars movie, The Empire Strikes Back. You
Yep.
have a well-rounded cast, Harrison Ford. You can tell he had a lot more passion playing this character than he did playing Han Solo or in George Lucas's other film, American Graffiti, for sure. This was in the movie. I feel like something opened up in him. He's like, you know what? I've never played a character like this before. Everything that he's able to do, it makes me want to be him. Like I said, that character makes you want to be him. Everything he's able to do and what he ends up receiving, that's what you want out of a character. So great cast, great female protagonist, Marion Ravenwood Karen Allen. She gives such a three-dimensional, smart alecky sidekick. John Rhys Davies as Salah. He's like everything you want in a friend in Egypt. If you go to Egypt, you want a friend, you need somebody like Salah to tag along with when it comes to singing and his knowledge and how he's able to distract the Nazis.
Right.
The action set pieces from the Boulder sequence in South America to the shootout in Nepal to the Cairo chase and then the truck and then the airplane, the submarine, and of course the revelation of what the Ark is capable of doing. Although, it surprised me nobody rips that apart saying that that's corny. Like, in a way, it is kind of corny if people accept it,
Right.
It's a movie where I just can't say no to anything because everything presented in that film is great. The thing that makes the scenes come alive is definitely John Williams' score. Without John Williams' score, like you said, I don't think the film will be able to fly the same. Like, imagine they put Jerry Goldsmith or Alan Silvestri. I don't think it would have that Philharmonic quality. It would be too on the nose.
I agree. Yep.
Also, I think the thing that makes this movie the best is the number of memorable moments it has, and it all has to be because of Douglas Slocum and his cinematography. But ultimately, I think I mentioned this to you before. Raiders of the Lost Ark is the movie that made me interested in how movies are made. And it cracked my mind open into realizing a lot of movies are derivative of each other, like Star Wars is. Like, when looking at Star Wars, breaking it apart, it brings you back to Akira Kurosawa and all the action space serials of the 30s and 40s, similar to that of Raiders of the Lost Ark. There's just so much greatness packed into this movie. I can't think of a single flaw, except, of course, the episode from Big Bang Theory. Have you ever seen that episode?
I've heard of it.
Yeah.
I've heard of this theory.
Everything that Indiana Jones does nothing to the overall film. It still ends the exact same way.
Right.
But
I think the only thing that hurts that theory is that it would not have gotten into the Americans' hands if he was not there. The Nazis eventually would have actually gotten possession of it if Indy wasn't standing there with Marion watching all this, or not watching all this happen. But to me, that theory falls apart.
Yeah. Do we go to watch movies because of destinations, or do we watch movies because of the journey? That's the question I would ask. Like, we go to movies to travel with the characters.
Yes.
And this is the action adventure movie where you get to travel with the characters, and it's always fun. It never gets dull. By the end of the film, it just makes you want to see it again. I never get bored watching this movie. If I played this like 20 times in like one sitting, I'd never get bored. Would never get bored watching that movie.
I agree.
So those are my thoughts on Raiders of the Lost Ark.
That's great. Let's move on to Indiana Jones and the Temple of Doom, which technically is a prequel. A lot of people don't know that. It takes place a year before Raiders, 1935. Raiders in 1936. But this movie was released on May 23rd, 1984, had a budget of $28 million, grossed $333 million, runtime 1 hour, 58 minutes. This one takes some big risks. It's a very different movie from Raiders. That's why I really appreciate this movie, actually, because I feel like with any sequel, especially when you talk to any artist, that's behind these kinds of movies, they kind of get tired of making the same thing again. They want to try something new and different. And so that's very much what they're doing here, taking it darker. That's kind of George Lucas's whole kind of thing about trilogies, is like the second chapter is the darkest, and then that whole thing. He does it with Star Wars. But this one, Spielberg and Lucas were kind of in dark places in their own lives at this point.
Yes.
Lucas was going through a very difficult divorce. Spielberg just went through a breakup with his longtime girlfriend. And so they were kind of in a place where they kind of wanted to go into more of a horror-esque route, just because that's where they were mentally. And to me, this works. I actually like this movie a lot because they really do find a way to balance the darkness with a lot of humor. To some people, I think that the humor is maybe a little annoying or a little too overdone. To me, it works, again, because these are kind of silly B-movie adventure serials, right, that they're based on. And so I don't mind when they take things a little over the top. I think it actually kind of works in its favor and makes it more fun. The opening musical number is great. Anything Goes. Spielberg always wanted to direct a musical, even back in the 80s. He finally got to, like 2 years ago, with West Side Story, which was excellent. But this opening number was really good. Really liked it. It's a cool introduction. Indy was, of course, inspired by James Bond. Spielberg wanted to make a James Bond movie, and George Lucas said, no, I've got a better idea. Let's make Indiana Smith. At the time, it was Indiana Smith. They changed it to Indiana Jones. So they give him that tuxedo, that he has in the club. And he's very kind of Bond-esque in that opening scene, which is a lot of fun. Of course, the club is called Club Obi-Wan for all us Star Wars fans, which is really fun. The whole opening is just really fun. It's a great introduction to Willie and to Shorty, hold on to your potatoes, Dr. Jones, that whole thing. It's just a really fun chase. The great visual gag of him saying, nice try, Lao She, and then shutting the door and it's Lao She Airlines. It's just a great visual gag they have in there. I really like Shorty and Willie. I think these two characters are really different from Sala and Marion. I think that's, first of all, something that they really wanted. Let's give us something different, something new. So Willie is very much a sort of damsel in distress, kind of constantly screaming and annoyed by what's going on. Very much a fish out of water. And Shorty's a very capable young sidekick. He knows martial arts. Like, he really gets Indy out of a lot of situations here, which is a lot of fun. So I like the very unique dynamic that we have between these three characters in this movie. A lot of creepy stuff, though. I mean, the heart scene is like an all-time, like, crazy gross out moment. It's like you start to want to just cover your heart just thinking about it. The whole dinner scene is a super just silly gross out sequence, but there's a lot of heart in it too. I feel like Indy and Shorty, they have a great relationship. You really like them, you really care about them. You feel like this is kind of one of the few people Indy really cares about in his life. And so I really think all that works. I really like there's a shot in this movie. It's one of my favorite Indy shots, like the sunset shot in Raiders. This one is when Indy's been freed from the voodoo, which is another super creepy moment. He's freed from that, and the minecart comes up on him, and the light slowly reveals Indy standing there with his hat and his whip, and he's ready to just help the kids get freed and fight the bad guys. Great moment. So yeah, a lot of memorable moments here. Of course, the minecart chase that leads into is an all-time great action sequence as well, that leads to the bridge sequence, which is a huge kind of one of those classic kind of cliffhanger-y moments that this series is known for. This movie I find to be super fast-paced. I mean, it's just constantly moving. I really enjoy it, and I really enjoy Indy's character arc here, because he really starts as a guy that's just a treasure hunter that wants fortune and glory. And by the end of it, he's this heroic kind of savior of this village in a way that's, I think, is really kind of cool. So I get a kick out of it. I have a ton of fun with this one. I like that it gives us a unique entry in Indy's life. And so what are your thoughts on Temple of Doom?
Like I said previously, I didn't see Temple of Doom until much later on in my life. And when I saw it, I didn't see it on VHS like Raiders and Last Crusade. I saw it on DVD with the 2006 special edition, so it had new surround sound and the quality looked better.
Nice.
I remember I was watching it with my twin sister Claire. Temple of Doom is actually her favorite Indiana Jones film, and I think it's because of the roller coaster quality the film contributes, as well as just how distinct it is compared to Raiders, Last Crusade, Kingdom, and the new one, Dial of Destiny. For a very long time, this was the elephant in the room when it came to Indiana Jones movies. Looking back on it during my binge, I realized you can consider this the to hell and back again type of quest, where they showcase both elements, fire and water, in an interesting way. I don't know if you ever saw that, but I kept telling myself, I'm like, I don't need to see Elemental now. I already got the Elemental movie right here, Indiana Jones and the Temple of Doom. So, yeah, as I was saying, it's an incredibly dark, slightly racist roller coaster ride. It's bold, it's fearless, and it's fresh. But I would say, like, at the time, I thought it was a bit character contradictory towards Indy. I understand it was a prequel, but then you get the prologue later in Last Crusade. He wants to take artifacts to museums, yet in Temple of Doom, he's like, I just want the fortune and glory. I'm okay with the fortune and glory thing because it pays off at the end where he realizes he doesn't need the fortune, he doesn't need the glory. He's already got it with his friends. So
right.
I like that. Willie, played by Steven Spielberg's wife, Kate Capshaw. She's pretty much Fay Ray 2.0. Fay Ray, Andero from the King Kong movie.
Yes.
And rewatching it, she did get a bit annoying. Like, you did not need to scream here and there, and you don't really rise up to the occasion like Marion. I know they were trying to be different than Marion, but Willie's okay. She's not my favorite. I would think, she's probably my least favorite out of all the female characters. Just my opinion. I was okay with the lack of globe-trotting. I think out of all of them, we only go to 2 locations. First, we're in Shanghai. Cool opening. Odd to open it up with a musical number. That's the thing that makes this film so distinct. This is the only Indiana Jones movie where the movie opens up with a musical number in a nightclub. Indiana Jones is dressed up like James Bond, asking for this precious diamond, gets poisoned, has to take both Willie and the drug at the same time, then meets up with this little kid who just comes out of nowhere saying, wow, holy smokes, crash landed. Which, by the way, Ki Kwan. Ki Kwan's a major highlight in this movie.
Yep.
And it's a big reason as to why I like this movie, because he's great. And I'm so happy that he's back. Because I missed him. I loved him in Temple of Doom, and I loved him in The Goonies. I heard that he left and he became a teacher. I'm like, you're a good actor, come back. And then he comes back with Everything Everywhere All at Once and ends up winning Best Supporting Actor at the Oscars, which he deserved. Because he gave a great performance with Michelle Yeoh. He was fantastic.
Yeah, and this is his first movie, which is crazy to think about.
Yeah, it is crazy. But the selling chip, like with Raiders of the Lost Ark, Raiders of the Lost Ark has the boulder. I'll say that's the most iconic moment when Indy's running away from the boulder with the golden idol in hand. This film has the minecart chase. I know people say, oh no, it's the Shanghai chase or the rope bridge. No, the thing that sells this movie is the minecart, because that's the roller coaster we'd like to experience. And I think you can with the Disneyland area, but I really would like it if they actually go to Animal Kingdom, make it look like the Temple of Doom. That'd be so cool.
That would be cool.
That would be so cool. That's the kind of ride I want to see. So overall, Indiana Jones and the Temple of Doom is entertaining, yet I found it to be weaker in some areas, but it never loses the surrealistic adventure quality. It perhaps is the most surreal-esque. It's a bit more surreal-esque than Raiders, in my opinion. So that's a win right there. It's a fun movie, but not my favorite Indiana Jones movie.
Gotcha. Great thoughts. All right, let's move on to Indiana Jones and the Last Crusade. This one was released May 24th, 1989. Budget of $48 million, grossed $474 million, runtime of 2 hours and 8 minutes. So this is a film that takes place in the year 1938, at least the bulk of it. Of course, the origin story of Indy happens in 1912 with River Phoenix playing a young Indiana Jones, Harrison Ford's own pick. He had just worked with him on the Mosquito Coast, and he really liked him, and he thought he looked kind of like him. So they cast him, and what great casting. I mean, he really captures the essence of Harrison Ford as Indiana Jones in his speech, in his mannerisms, in his physicality. I mean, it is really a top-notch performance. Absolutely incredible. The whole opening is just so much fun. The chase across the circus train is just so cool to watch. And you get, you know, that where that fear of snakes comes from and how he got his scar and, you know, I mean, all this stuff that's there. The origin of his hat even happens up there. So, and that's just a great transition shot too, of him putting the hat on him and him lifting his head up. And we are now with older Indy. And so just a stunning opening sequence that is just, you know, thrill a minute kind of scene. Then, of course, you know, we get into this new adventure with Indiana Jones, and it's really a father-son story. That's the whole heart of this movie is, of course, they cast James Bond as Indiana's father because he was inspired by James Bond. And so Sean Connery is in this. He just does a fantastic job as Professor Henry Jones Sr., really delivering such a unique performance for Sean Connery. I mean, he's known as, you know, James Bond. I mean, he's the action hero guy. And they have him playing this kind of somewhat bumbling professor in a way that was such a unique role for him to take on and such a bold career move that I think it just really works because it's so well written, so well played. You know, they have great chemistry, and it's just a really, really a lot of heart there, a lot of heart between those two characters, and where the relationship starts and where it ends up is a great stuff. So they have some great stuff in the catacombs when they go to Venice, under the library with the rats. You know, they've always got some creepy crawlies in there, and they do that with the bugs in Temple of Doom, and here with the rats, which leads to a great boat chase. I feel like this movie is just full of great action sequences. The boat chase happens in Venice, which is thrilling. That, of course, leads to the castle, which leads to the motorcycle chase, which leads to the airplane. And I mean, it's just like one thing after another. It's like they're constantly moving. And so it's another really fast-paced film. It ends up with this incredible tank battle that happens in the desert. Just a really, really fun sequence, what's going on inside the tank with Marcus. And then, you know, of course, Indy's, you know, on the horse. And it's just a really well choreographed sequence that just is really, really fun to watch. Then, of course, you know, it ends up with the Knights challenges at the end of the movie. And that's really what I like about this movie is they return to the biblical artifact. And I feel like this one does have, you know, deeper spiritual themes. You know, he has to go through the whole thing of, you know, the penitent man will pass and the leap of faith. And there's all these things that are in there that are just really interesting and kind of deep and fun to explore. And so really like this movie. It's really fun. It has, you know, I think actually Elsa might be my least favorite love interest, just because I feel like there's not a lot there. I feel like the twist is cool with her, but I feel like there's not a lot going on with her outside of that after we find that out. So I like her as a character still, but she might be my least favorite. But look, this one has such a great finale, the right off into the sunset, the moment where Henry Sr. calls him Indiana is just one of those all-time great, Indy moments. And so it's really about, drives home the point of a lot of these movies, which is about how relationships are more important than the treasure that you're going after. It's really the people around you that matter. So just another great mix of great humor. This one might be the funniest, actually. I can find myself cracking up throughout this movie. Great humor, great drama, great action, a little bit of horror thrown in there too. A great MacGuffin we're going after, and so just a really excellent way to continue the franchise here, and was the end for a long time, and so yeah, I have a great time with this one. What are your thoughts on Last Crusade?
I think it's the most emotional and embracive experience out of the three, actually no, I take it back, out of all of them. The more I think about it, it's definitely the most emotional to me, and I love that metaphorically it's not really about the quest for the Holy Grail, it's about the search for the Father and how the Father and the Son reunite through this quest. And all you seem to care about by the end is not necessarily grabbing that grail, making sure that both the Father and the Son get out of this alive.
Yes.
Watching the film, you can tell the filmmakers were creating an apology letter to Temple of Doom. Because, yeah, it was like 5 years after Temple of Doom, George Lucas and Steven Spielberg, they're finally moving on from their depression of, getting divorced and separating, realizing how divisive Temple of Doom was, because it was divisive at the time. So Steven Spielberg told George, we need to go back to the Raiders format. Let's bring back Marcus Brody give him a bigger role. Let's bring back Saul. Let's bring back the college. Let's show his teaching days. Does he like being a teacher? Does he hate being a teacher? You find that out in this movie,
Right.
where he stands and all that. But I love the biblical angle. First, we had the Ark of the Covenant. Now we have the Holy Grail. And no, I do not see any connection to Monty Python and the Holy Grail, even though it's about the Holy Grail. We could debate in another episode which Grail Quest movie is better. But,
There you go.
yeah. So, Last Crusade, apology letter to Temple of Doom. Unneeded to be an apology letter because I would have been open if the third film was another bold move for Indiana Jones to keep things fresh. But it was nice to link back to a sense of normalcy, even if it doesn't end up being as strong as Raiders. That's my opinion. Like, the Nazis are back. I don't personally think they are as intimidating as they were in Raiders of the Lost Ark. That's just my opinion. I mean, they're there, but they're just being used by Donovan. Like, Donovan, the villain, he's only using the Nazis to get the Grail. He doesn't care about them taking over the world. They're not working together like they're Belloc's working with the Nazis to get the Ark,
Right.
Yeah, the thing that makes this movie fly is, of course, the emotion. Harrison Ford and Sean Connery's chemistry and dynamic, and the comedy, which blossoms out of that, which, like you said, it's the funniest out of the Indiana Jones films. I do agree. As it comes to the female character, Elsa, I agree. I mean, she's not even given a theme. Like, Marion's given a theme and Willie's given a theme. Elsa's not given a theme in this movie. That theme is given to Henry Jones, Sir. He is the theme, which is also the Grail theme. Their theme is exactly the same. But I don't mean to get inappropriate, but the scene where Indy asks his father, "How did you know she was a Nazi?" And he says, "She talks in her sleep."
Right.
I didn't get it at the time, but now that I'm older, I'm rewatching it. I'm busting out laughing. I found out that take in the movie, they cut it off before Harrison Ford actually breaks down laughing, but that was real. He just looks at him and he's that was ad lib. That was not the intended line he was supposed to say. Sean Connery just said it.
That's great.
It worked. But yeah, the comedic timing and its appliance to the action sequences is strong. I love that we're back to the globe-trotting element. We're not staying in just India. We're going to Italy. I want to go to Italy personally. I've never been to Italy. We go to Austria. We go to Berlin. We go to Iskandrin, Alexandretta, which brings back the desert aesthetic from Raiders. I love the tank chase sequence. I love the 3 trials that Indy has to go through. And once he captures the Grail and then reuniting with his father, that's good. And I agree with you. Now, at first, this didn't make me cry, but every time I watch it now, that scene where Indy is just lost to Elsa. Elsa fell to her death because she was greedy towards the Grail, and Indy's about to do the same, and then his father calls him Indiana, and he just stops and looks at him. That just shows how much his father loves his son, even though he never showed it at all during his childhood years. It tears me up now.
Yeah.
It tears me up, so it's great. So the locations, the subversive female lead trope, the music, I think this is John Williams' second best score after Raiders of the Lost Ark. I just love the themes of almost every character in this movie. The cinematography by Douglas Slocum, again, it's great. The only flaw I have with this movie is how familiar it is to Raiders. That's the only flaw I have with this movie. But other than that, I think this is a solid movie. And although we had 2 movies following this, it still was a good way to wrap the trilogy, if you can call it a trilogy. It's not really a trilogy. It's just 3 different adventures. But it's a good ending, especially with seeing Harrison riding off into the sunset.
Yes.
With his friends and family,
Yes, I agree. I agree completely. All right. Let's move on to Indiana Jones and the Kingdom of the Crystal Skull, released May 22nd, 2008. $185 million budget, grossed $790 million, runtime of 2 hours and 2 minutes. This is the first Indy film I saw in theaters, so I was so excited to get to see my favorite movie hero, and I had a blast with it. I mean, I still have fun with this movie. I know it's got its flaws, which we'll discuss, but I think that this is, it's interesting because, of course, Indy is based on the 30s and 40s serial adventures, and this one is based on 50s sci-fi B movies. And so it's interesting that they take him into this new era And, this is largely George Lucas's whole idea. He really wanted to make it. He wanted to call it Indiana Jones and the Saucermen from Mars, and like really lean into the B movie elements of it, which I'm glad they didn't go that far.
Yeah. Okay.
Harrison Ford and Spielberg weren't fully on board here, but I think that it's a movie that they largely made for the fans. I think the fans were really dying for another one. They constantly get asked, "When are you making another one?" And Lucas had this idea, and they're like, "You know what? Let's give it a shot." And I feel like they kind of just went along with it, and they weren't maybe quite as passionate about it as they were the other films. And I think that kind of comes through. I don't think Ford is totally phoning it in, but I feel like he's not fully invested as he was in the other films. So it's a bit of a step down, certainly. Look, there's of course monkey swinging, which we can discuss. Lucas was a Tarzan fan. What can I say? And he just wanted a swinging scene, so I guess they threw it in there.
Flying freighter as well.
Right. Yeah, they nuked the fridge, which is the new jump the shark is nuke the fridge. But look, I mean, all these things again, they serve to show us the era we're in, which is the 50s setting, the atomic age, the Russians are the villain now, the communism, that whole thing, the red scare, all that's going on. I thoroughly enjoyed the opening. I think the warehouse in Area 51, that's such a cool way to open this movie. The shot of Ford with putting his hat on, and the silhouettes there on the shadow of the car and all that, I think that all looks really good. Kaminski, Janusz Kaminski shot this one as he shot most of Spielberg's movies over the years, and his cinematography and lighting is really good. Of course, we're in the digital age now, so they kind of overuse CGI a little bit here, which is kind of unfortunate. But a lot of it is shot practically. The scene that I like, I think, the most is the chase through the college on Mutt's motorcycle. I think that's a really well-designed sequence, and you can tell a lot of it's shot practically. And so I think that scene works really well. I think, going with aliens or interdimensional beings or whatever you want to call them is a bit of a stretch. But again, if you're thinking of this as Indy inside a sci-fi B movie, it kind of works. I think that's kind of the mentality you have to have going into this one. It's very different from the other films. It's another one that, like, I feel like every other movie, they make a really weird, bizarre, like Temple is kind of the outlier, and this one is kind of the outlier. It's like something different that he did. But I still think the cast is great. I'm a huge fan of Karen Allen. So getting her back as Marion was a really, really a delight. I mean, her in this role is they pick up right where they left off and just do a great job with it. So really like that. I liked a lot of the action scenes. Actually, even the jungle chase, I think is a lot of fun. The sword fighting on the vehicles is kind of a fun thing to watch. The ants, that whole sequence is cool. So there's a lot that I like. I enjoy watching this movie. It's just not my go-to Indy movie. You know what I mean? So it's definitely, again, a step down. I have fun with the ending too. I think the wedding is a great way to end it. I think that's really cool. And we do get character development with an older Indy. Kind of, he's kind of still trying to live that old life he used to live. And by the end of it, he's really realized, like, hey, I'm getting older here. I need to kind of grow up. This is, I feel like, the Indy's growing up movie a little bit. He gets married, he kind of settles down, and learns he has a son. And I like Shia LaBeouf. I'm a big fan of him as an actor. I think he's good. I really don't think he's giving a bad performance. I think script issues and other things are more of the issue with it than the cast. So yeah, a movie I enjoy, but definitely not his greatest adventure. But one that I think is actually an important one, especially leading into the one we're about to talk about, Dial of Destiny. It's actually a very important film, considering what he goes through in that one. All right, so that's it for my thoughts on Kingdom of the Crystal Skull. What do you think about this one, Ben?
Kingdom of the Crystal Skull.
Quite the title.
I remember seeing the first trailer on YouTube. I still am. When I got into YouTube, watching clips from all my favorite movies. And the next thing I see a trailer for Indiana Jones 4. And at first I thought it was a fake, but then I watch it. I'm like, wait, is this for real? And then I run to my dad, like, Dad, are they making another Indiana Jones? And he tells me, yes, they're making another Indiana Jones. I'm thrilled. I'm thrilled.
Yeah.
So I think it was May when it came out. It was May, right? It was May.
May 22nd.
It was May. I was 9 years old. I went with Dad to see the movie. And I had no idea what the MacGuffin was going to be until I saw the movie.
Oh,
That's the thing
wow.
I liked about the trailers. The trailers did not reveal exactly what it was going to be. You
Yeah.
just kept seeing a crystal skull. Like, what is this crystal skull?
Right.
What's the significance of this crystal skull? And then we get to Area 51, which is the exact same warehouse from Raiders of the Lost Ark, which was a cool
Yes.
callback. I'm like, I love
Yeah.
how they connected both. You see the coffin, and I have no idea what this burnt body thing is. I whispered to my dad, "Dad, what is this thing?" And he tells me it's an alien. I'm like, "What?" Like, what? Aliens? Then they do the entire chase scene. I love the chase scene in the warehouse. One of my favorite action scenes from Indiana Jones. Like, that scene is great, and
Yeah,
the
when
level of practical stunt work that Harrison did by himself was impressive in that film.
Yes.
Cool start. Then we get to Doomtown, the fake town Indy's in. I'm like, this doesn't feel like Indiana Jones. This feels like Indiana Jones in a Wonderland, you know?
Right.
And that, I know that's a part of Indiana Jones. You always find Indiana Jones in a weird place at the opening of the movie. He's always in a weird place. So
Yeah.
it's not distinct by any means. It's just weird to find him here the most. It's the weirdest
Right.
thing to find him in. Then the next thing you know, there's an A-bomb that's about to be blown. He's trying to find a place to be protected, and the only thing he can think of is hiding inside a fridge. I know so many people debate, like, nah, that's not realistic. There's no way he could survive that. And for a while, I agree with them. I'm like, yeah, that's one of the dumbest things I've ever seen. But you got to take this into consideration. Temple of Doom, there's no way they could have survived falling down a plane on that raft. There's no way. They would have turned into pancakes by the time they reached the surface of the mountain. Over time, I've welcomed it, and I love the shot where probably one of my favorite shots is when Indy's climbing up the mountain and he sees the mushroom cloud. Like, that is a really cool shot. I remember watching the video diaries on the making of the movie, and the way they shot that scene, it's like midday and Indy's climbing up this mountain. They didn't shoot like in sunset hour or anything. It's midday, so the amount of visual effects work on that particular shot I found was impressive, even if it was a CGI moment. But that was cool. I loved the FBI angle where the FBI doesn't seem to trust him. They think he's a spy, like his sidekick Mac is revealed to be.
Mm-hmm.
And then you just forget all about that, which kind of I wish they added that, especially with Indy trying to escape to Peru later with Mutt Williams. But it's fine. It's fine. There's inconsistencies with the original trilogy, which I ignored. I know there are flaws in Raiders of the Lost Ark, which I'm not even considering because I don't want to talk about it. But although the film complements the 50s aesthetic rather well, it does. I think it's really cool. The Indiana Jones vibe feels a bit out of place. However, that doesn't mean it wasn't entertaining. It still had a lot of cool moments, which I liked. I loved the motorcycle scene. I loved the trip to Oriana's grave in Peru. That was a cool scene, how practical the sets were. Some of the comedy worked, not all of it, but some of it did. This is probably a guilty pleasure, but I do like the quicksand scene.
Oh, yeah.
Even though realistically they could have just used their leather jackets to get out of there. That's how close he was to Mutt. So they ended up using a snake. I know they had to. They had to show Indy's encounter with the snake. There always is an encounter, which reminds you, yes, Indy's still afraid of snakes.
Yeah.
He still hasn't gotten over his fear. But that's cool. Shia LaBeouf is cool. I had no problems with Shia LaBeouf when I saw the movie. I remember seeing Holes beforehand. He was great in that. The return of Karen Allen was sweet. She is still, in my opinion, the best female character from Indiana Jones. Although they made some pretty interesting sequels, they've never been able to top Marion, nor have they still. Even with Dial of Destiny, no, it's Marion. You can't top Marion. No matter how hard you try, you're never going to top Marion.
I agree.
So that's great. I know George Lucas was fascinated with CGI at the time because he incorporated a lot of it into the Star Wars prequel films. Over time, like if you watch them nowadays, they've been rendered to look better, but at the time, they looked so video game-ish, it was hard for me to believe this was Star Wars because I prefer the practical aesthetic to a galaxy far, far away. So putting it into Kingdom of the Crystal Skull, it was hit or miss. Like I liked the ants. When it came to the alien, I'm like, did it have to be aliens? And then you see the flying saucer rise from Akator, and I stopped thinking for a sec that I was watching Indiana Jones. I thought I was watching another B movie. I don't know about you. But thankfully, they were able to save it average with the ending of Harrison or Indy finding a family. even though this is another problem, I don't think Indy had a really good arc or any arc whatsoever in Kingdom of the Crystal Skull like he did with the first 3 movies. He doesn't really learn anything. He just gets something. After recalling, oh yeah, I just lost Marcus, I just lost Dad, what else is there? So, a lot of ideas which could have been cool. Like, I like the idea of the son of Indiana Jones. That was a cool idea. I actually wish they revealed that earlier. And finding Indiana Jones telling him, I just found out I think you're my dad. And then Indy's like, well, who's your mom? I don't know who your mom is. And he keeps saying Mary. Like, I don't know Mary. Who's Mary? Then he sees Mary, and then he's like, what? And so I think that would have been better. That's just me.
Yeah.
And then there's an over-reliance of other characters, which you don't need. Max, okay, he's cool. Is he needed? Or Ox, he's cool. Is he needed? Kind of not. He's kind of another Sean Connery-ish character who's obsessed with something, and he's just following it. So it is what it is. I like John Hurt. Rest in peace. He's great. He will always be the guy who got a chest burster in Alien. He will always be that character to me. But it was cool to see him in Indiana Jones. Cate Blanchett. I know you didn't talk about Cate Blanchett, but I thought Cate Blanchett was an interesting villain. A bit two-dimensional. You don't learn that much about her, but she was good enough to be an Indy villain.
Yeah, I agree with that. I think she did a pretty good job. She's pretty menacing throughout the film, which I thought was good. And so, yeah, I did like her. She's such a great actress. She can pretty much do anything. Yeah, good. Any more thoughts on that one?
All right. Well, overall, there were some moments that did not need to be CGI'd. I would prefer practical elements. The chase sequence, I wish they just cut the monkeys. They should have just cut the monkeys, because beforehand it actually was a really cool chase sequence. My problem is the monkeys and how they were handled. And of course the aliens. The aliens, they could have been cool. I think the aliens could have worked. They could have worked, but the way they just presented it. I know they were trying to have it look like the 50s aliens, but George, we don't go to see Indiana Jones movies to see stuff like that. We prefer, the mysticism, the treasure hunting feeling, not the B-movie feeling. So it was bold, it was new, and it's obvious based off Steven Spielberg's direction. I feel like the movie lacked a certain passion that the other 3 movies had. And you can tell by the bonus material, Steven Spielberg said he didn't want to make this movie. He only did it because George wanted to make it. Yep. So call what you will, it's good enough. Especially with this new movie that just came out, I acknowledge Kingdom of the Crystal Skull as a part of the journey. Because there is definitely a journey that's involved, especially after seeing The Dial of Destiny, which I cannot wait to talk about now.
Yes, well, let's do it right now. We're there. We're ready to go. So Indiana Jones and The Dial of Destiny released June 30th, 2023. Budget of $295 million. Runtime of 2 hours, 34 minutes. So by far the longest Indy adventure yet.
Very long.
Yes. This one, James Mangold is taking the reins from Steven Spielberg as director and co-writer of the film. He's a guy I really like. I've enjoyed all of Mangold's work. So he takes over. This is officially the final Indiana Jones adventure. Harrison Ford has said so himself, which, I mean, he's 80 years old, so not much of a surprise there. So yeah, we're going to talk non-spoilers, just so you guys know. We're not going to get into any spoilers yet. We'll let you know. We'll give you a spoiler warning once we get into that. But just overall thoughts, I really enjoyed this. I think this is, in many ways, the perfect send-off for the character. I really enjoyed Harrison Ford. His performance is so good. He's really into it. You can tell he's really giving it his all. This was really his idea. I mean, Spielberg and Lucas didn't really want to make another one. He really wanted a send-off for the character that was impactful and meaningful to him. And so, and you can tell that he's really, really just giving it his all. His performance is really nuanced and interesting and engaging. And the new characters are great. I really enjoyed Phoebe Waller-Bridge. I thought they had really good chemistry. Mads Mikkelsen always plays a great villain, and this is no exception. Another great villain from him. All the other characters are enjoyable. You kind of get a good mix of new characters. Of course, as you've seen in the trailer, Salah's back. It's a small part, but I'm glad they brought him back. We'll talk briefly, again, we're not going to spoil anything, but the opening sequence, which has been teased in the trailer of a younger Indy in the 40s, fighting the Nazis on this train. It's really fun. It's a really fun sequence. I had a lot of fun with that one. Great way to open the movie and set us on this journey. Look, this one it had everything I wanted in an Indy movie. It had adventure, it had action, it had a great MacGuffin, it had a great kind of treasure hunting, puzzle solving, sequences, and good dose of humor. Certainly some frightening moments in there as well. So it's just another well-rounded Indiana Jones adventure, felt much in the vein of Raiders and Last Crusade, that I really enjoyed. I feel like it had a slower pace, but I think that works in its favor because it is dealing with Indy as an aging hero. They're very much playing into his age here. They're not trying to hide the fact that he's almost 80 years old. That's really much part of the story. Is kind of a hero at sunset, I think is how James Mangold has put it. And so I really liked it. It felt different, but yet it felt very familiar at the same time. It gave us things that were new with the character, but very much had the fun chase scenes and the fighting the Nazis. And I mean, it's all there. Great John Williams music, wonderful cinematography, great production design. The way they're blending the practical and the CG, I thought was a lot better than Crystal Skull, even though there is quite a bit of CGI here. They're trying to do more practically, you can tell. So again, a movie I really enjoyed. I'm not going to get into details yet. I just want to get your thoughts though, Ben, on what did you think of Dial of Destiny?
Indiana Jones and the Dial of Destiny. There's a lot to unravel when it comes to that movie.
Yeah.
And I think the thing, just so you know, before I went to go see this movie, I was kind of dreading it because I wasn't going to listen to critics, because I know nowadays they just tear things apart. Like they tore apart the Star Wars sequel trilogy. YouTubers tear apart the Star Wars sequel trilogy, and they're always like forcing me like, hey, you can't like this movie because if you like this movie, you're not cool. Same with like the Jurassic movies. Like if you like Jurassic World Dominion, you're brain dead. You're crazy. So people like Critical Drinker. You know who Critical Drinker is? I can't stand the dude. I can't stand him. I can't stand Ben Shapiro. I know what people like Critical Drinker, Ben Shapiro, Tyrone Magnus. I know what they're all gonna say about this movie. And as much as I respect them, I'm like, some of them, I'm like, you guys, I don't think you guys should really be talking about movies, to be honest with you. So putting that aside, I wanted to go see this movie. And I wanted to take my dad. And I knew he was a big Indiana Jones fan. I'm a big Indiana Jones fan. I'm like, you know what? Based off the trailers, I'm impressed with the trailers. I was even more impressed with the trailer for this movie than I was with Kingdom of the Crystal Skull. But getting back to it, I walked into this movie and I knew it was going to be a different experience because Indiana Jones is old. So I told myself, just give me a good ending. Just give me a good ending to Indiana Jones. And I am happy to say they really gave him a good ending. They gave him a great ending. As for the movie, the prologue is amazing.
Yeah.
Like the first shot of the film, it's not what you expect. No spoiler. It's not what you expect, but the way it just begins, the entire prologue. Where was that in the last Indiana Jones? It was great. Then the movie transitions. And then once it transitions to the tone change, that's when I realized, like, you know what? I understand why they did this prologue now. They wanted to give you the Indiana Jones that you remember and then show how different Indy is now in the 60s compared to the 40s. So it becomes an entirely different movie, yet collectively the movie works. It really brought back a lot of the magic, even though James Mangold is not Spielberg. He's not Spielberg, but I think Harrison, Kathleen Kennedy, Frank Marshall, Steven Spielberg, George Lucas, I think they chose a good successor who could tell a fitting coda to one of the greatest characters ever put to screen. Similar to how he did it with Wolverine, with the X-Men movies, and Logan. Logan's one of the best superhero movies I've ever seen. So Indiana Jones and the Dial of Destiny is far from being a failure to my own eyes. I still have a lot to unravel. I plan on seeing it again, but I really enjoyed this movie. And if you hate this movie, fine by me. But that's not going to change my mind about it. I had so much fun with my dad. By the time the credits rolled, we were walking out. We were both smiling and talking about the scenes that we liked and the things that we noticed. It just was, it's what you want when you're coming out of a movie, you know? So that being said, the film is a win to my eyes.
Awesome. Awesome. Yeah, I very much had a similar experience. We took the whole family, my mom and dad, all my brothers were there. Even a
Yeah,
couple of my cousins tagged along. So it was a
really.
great, yeah, it was
Awesome.
a great time. We had a really fun time. So yeah, I think if you're on the fence about seeing this, highly recommend it. I really think you're going to have a fun time. If you're looking for a cool summer blockbuster, I mean, this has got it all. And on top of that, you're adding the final adventure with this iconic cinematic hero. So yeah, Indy fans need not worry. Check it out. I think you're going to have a good time. Now, we're going to get into some spoilers. So, the movie has been out for a couple days. If you haven't seen it, please skip over this section, go to the time codes below. You can go straight to our rankings. But we're going to talk some spoilers here because a lot of big stuff happened in this movie
Yes, I
that
agree.
we need to discuss. So, first thing I wanted to start with was, yeah, that prologue. I just think it again, like you said, it captures everything about Indy that we love, right? I
I
mean,
agree.
it's punching Nazis, it's a chase through a train. He's trying to get a MacGuffin. I mean, it's literally like, again, a lot like Raiders. The opening, it's like a movie unto itself, right there. You kind of get a mini movie at the front of this, and the way they introduce Mads Mikkelsen, his character, and Toby Jones' character, and the titular dial of Destiny itself, I thought all worked really well. And the de-aging was really incredible. I mean, there were a couple of little wonky moments, but overall, I was fully in. And I was like just watching young Indy again. What did you think of that opening?
Lucasfilm has been experimenting with de-aging for a long time now. At first, you noticed it with Tarkin in Rogue One.
Yeah.
And I remember that being one of my flaws with the movie. I just couldn't buy the whole token thing, even though it was cool. I know. Oh no, Tarkin. What the heck am I saying? No, not J.R.R. Tolkien.
Similar people.
Forgive me, guys. Forgive me. I'm on Monster right now, so my brain's a bit of a frizzy. But yeah, de-aging. I was skeptical about it at first. Then they did it with Leia at the end of the Rogue One. They did it to Nick Fury and Captain Marvel. They did it to Hank Pym and Ant-Man. They did it in Avengers Endgame with a couple of the characters. And then they did it with Luke Skywalker in The Mandalorian Season 2, which I actually thought was great. I know it wasn't perfect, but it was good enough. As long as it's good enough, I will be happy.
And as long as they don't do it for too long, like they're on
Yeah.
screen for a short amount of time, and it works for that. If it was a whole movie, it wouldn't work.
That's what I was nervous about, because when they announced this movie, no one had any idea when this movie was going to take place.
Right.
And then there were some set pics of Harrison Ford with the dots on his face, and people were like, is this movie going to take place before Kingdom of the Crystal Skull? Are they actually going to make an Indiana Jones movie where Harrison is pretending to be young? This movie's going to be terrible. Then you start seeing scenes that are in New York, and there's a lot of Apollo 11 signs and symbols. I'm like, oh, so this takes place in 1969.
Yeah.
When I was little, just backstory, when I was little, I actually was obsessed with the Apollo program. I wanted to learn everything about the Apollo programs, and Apollo 11. Apollo 11 was interesting.
Yeah.
Whether you believe we actually made it to the moon or not, it was an interesting time.
Sure.
During the space race.
Yeah.
So back to where I was. Yeah, it was interesting. The prologue was interesting. I had a blast. I understand if people cannot buy some of the de-aging. There are moments, but overall, it really did feel like classic Indiana Jones.
Yeah,
which is
I totally agree.
To see. And I was fine, because once it transferred to 1969, I told myself, I got what I wanted already. Let's see what it's going to really be about.
Right. Well, let's talk a little about 69, because I thought that was a great year to set it, and it makes sense. I mean, coming off of Kingdom of the Crystal Skull, it's been about that long since that movie came out. And so, again, he's playing his age. It's, the space race, and they're playing into real history where Nazi scientists actually helped us with that whole thing and getting that to work.
I liked that. I really liked that.
Yeah, that was smart. That was a smart choice. And then, I just like seeing Indy, in his boxers, getting up and banging on the door of his neighbor who's playing, loud Beatles music. And it was just, again, an unexpected place to find him in, catching up with him. The movie slowed down, and the movie has that fun, fast-paced adventure feel, but it will also go into these kind of almost somber moments of, the film has a really dramatic core, and it's very character driven,
It
more
is.
almost more than action driven.
It is.
Um, which I thought was again refreshing and made sense for where he is at this point in his life. And so, yeah, all that worked for me really well. I liked the other flashback we got to I guess a middle-aged Indy. I thought that was a fun moment of exploring his relationship with the Shaw family and
Yeah.
Helena's father and her when she's younger. And I just think building the way they built that relationship really worked for me. And that's a core part of the film. So if that doesn't work for you, I could see why the movie might not work. Did that all work for you? The stuff with Phoebe Waller-Bridge?
Yeah. Yeah. It did. Of course, I was nervous just hearing the leaks. I'm like, I don't want this. Don't be a passing the torch story. Please keep it at Indy. And thankfully they do.
Yes.
They do keep it on Indy. I know people are going to say like, nah, it's not Indy's. It's Indy's movie.
Totally.
It's Indy's movie. You're seeing a majority when we're with Indy. You're seeing everything through Indy's eyes.
He's basically in every scene.
Yeah, almost every scene. Like
right.
It kind of branches off where you're seeing what the heroes are doing and what the villains are doing.
Right.
And I think that's my only flaw with the movie in terms of the pacing. I think there were too many scenes with the villains. Some scenes we just didn't need because I just wanted to focus on Indy. That's the only issue. I think if they cut a little bit of what the villains are doing and just focus more on the Indy, then the pacing would have went a bit more. But I did like the slower moments, especially there are two moments where I think Harrison Ford gives perhaps his best performance playing the character. The scene where he actually is tearing up. You've never seen Indy tear. He tried to in Last Crusade. And you could see, yes, he was blushing and his eyes are trying to water up, but he gets there in this movie.
Yeah.
So that alone, you know how passionate Harrison Ford is with playing this character.
Yeah, let's talk about those moments. I don't know which ones you're talking about. I'm assuming you're referring to when he's talking about the fate of his son.
Yeah, that's what I'm talking about.
Yeah, that was such a great scene and a great use of that character of Mutt. Obviously, Shia wasn't going to be in it. I figured they have to at least mention him. Yeah, and the way that they did it was just so unexpected and powerful that I thought that was just such a great choice with the writers.
Did you notice in the opening 1969, before we see Indy lying on the couch, there is this desk and you see a picture of Mutt Williams in a uniform. So when I saw that, I'm like, he went to Vietnam, didn't he?
Oh, I missed that.
I figured. I had a feeling there had to be a good reason as to why either Mutt was off with his own motorbike repair shop or he went to join the war in Vietnam.
Yeah.
Because Vietnam was going on in 69. So.
Yep. Absolutely. Yeah,
They tie that to the reason why Marion isn't really around. And
yes. And
I know some people, I heard that's a complaint that some people had. Some people thought, no, Indy should be happily married. Indy should be all adventurous. He should still be adventurous, but thinking realistically at his age, I don't think he wants to be thinking about being an adventurer because all he cares about is his family. And now that his family has been torn apart, all they can do is just pass the time away, reflecting on whether his life meant something.
Yeah. Makes perfect sense. So, yeah, I mean, I guess the last big spoilery thing I want to discuss is, of course, the bold move that they take in the third act
I loved it.
To have Indy time travel. I thought it was a great idea. I really liked the execution of it because, I mean, my heart was pounding out of my chest when they're in that plane. They're going. You're like, where are they going to end up? What is going to happen here? And
I had a feeling
when it's Archimedes, and it totally makes sense why they would be there, and it's like. And it makes sense, too, because this is a character that loves history and is all about historical artifacts. And to bring him to history is such a cool idea. And I thought it was really well executed. I adored the choice. So you enjoyed it, too.
Yeah. See, that was my concern with the film being about time travel. When I heard it was going to be about time travel, I'm like, are you sure that's a good idea? Because Aliens didn't work. But this film, from start to finish, how it pans out, the poetic nature of it. There is a poetic nature to it between Indy and the villain Voller.
Yeah.
They're frustrated with the time that they had.
Yeah.
Which is a time that they still want at the same time.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
there's
It's
a
great.
lot, dude.
Yeah.
There's
It's great.
so much. Which, by the way, coming to the villain, I think Voller is the most interesting villain since Belloc, my opinion. I think he's the most interesting out of all of them. I mean, Belloc was cool. He was a rival. He was the archaeologist, the equal to Indiana Jones. Then you had the leader of this evil occult Molaram.
Right.
He was okay. He was just evil to be evil, though. I didn't think he had any depth. Then you had Walter Donovan, which was cool, but I don't think he was as interesting as Belloc from the first movie. Then you had Irina Spalko, who was okay. She played the Russian part. She did everything that fit with the story, but Voller was just interesting.
Yeah.
And I know some people are going to complain about how he exits the film, but I thought it was enough.
Yeah.
I thought it was enough because he didn't believe in mysticism. He didn't believe in the mystical elements at all. All he cared about was calculations.
Yes.
And to see the look on his face realizing that his calculations were entirely wrong because he couldn't think about continental drift.
Yeah. Yeah. That was smart.
That was the thing. I'm like, you know what? He invented the dial all that time. There's a thing called continental drift. I hope he knows that. And then you see Indy look down and he's like, you know about continental drift, right? I'm like,
right.
So when they said that, I'm like, no, there's no way they're going back to 1939. They got to be going someplace else.
Yeah, exactly. So,
heading to the Battle of Syracuse, which is the thing that Indy talks about in his lecture in the opening of the movie.
Yes.
Ties it back together like bookends.
Yep.
So
definitely. Yeah, great. Really well written, really well thought out. Great plot. I enjoyed everything about it. That final shot was just the perfect shot to end on. I mean, hat. It's got to be the hat. It's always got to be the hat. The iconography is there, and having Marion back. I mean, that was the cherry on top. I mean, it was just a perfect moment to end on. So I had a blast with it. I like the themes of building on, like you kind of alluded to, regret, time, legacy.
Yes,
all of that.
Making your mark on history.
Yep. Absolutely. It all played really well.
Life didn't lead to anything. Yet he talks about, it's funny because he's being so hypocritical when he's on this adventure with Helena. He's talking about, the time he was tortured with voodoo, being shot so many times, going on these amazing adventures. Yet Helena's looking at him like, dude, you went on like one of the best experiences ever. How could you not be happy? But I think that's the thing I like about Dial of Destiny. It puts all his adventures into account. For where he is now, that by the end of it, he finally rises from his depressive state and becomes Indiana Jones again.
Yes, absolutely.
But the way it ends, I'm happy he's not like letting go of the fedora, giving it to Helena. If he did that, I would have been so mad. I would have been so mad, and then I would agree with people. I'm like, this movie wasn't great. So don't worry, guys. If anyone's here, no, Indy does not get replaced.
Yeah.
Indy is Indy, Helena is Helena, and Voller is Voller.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, absolutely. It was a great film. Okay, folks, that is our review for Indiana Jones and the Dial of Destiny. Make sure you check it out in theaters now. Now it's time for our ranking of every Indiana Jones movie. It's going to be a tough ranking. This is really hard to come up with.
It's going to be so hard, and I know there's going to be some people who are going to ring me up being like, are you for real?
Right. All right. So let's start off. We're going to rank all 5 films, starting with our least favorite, going to our favorite. So at number 5, my least favorite Indiana Jones movie is Kingdom of the Crystal Skull. That's what ended up at number 5. For all the reasons we alluded to, a little too much CGI, people just not as passionate about it that were involved. Kind of odd seeing Indy with aliens, a 50s sci-fi B movie mixed with an Indy adventure. Didn't quite work for me. So that's what I have at 5. Ben, what do you have at 5?
My number 5 is Kingdom of the Crystal Skull.
Gotcha.
And although Indiana Jones is present to a certain degree, I feel like the 50s aesthetic dominates the experience. So at the end of the day, it doesn't really feel like an Indiana Jones film. It just feels like the 50s with Indiana Jones.
I hear you. Yep, absolutely. Okay, moving on to our number 4 selection. Mine is Indiana Jones and the Temple of Doom. I ended up putting at number 4. This is the other outlier, like we talked about. It's just another kind of odd adventure for him. It still feels indie, but it has the darkness and the horror that maybe goes a little too far. I still really like this movie. These are all these are like 5-star movies for me pretty much. So it's hard to rank them, but
Even Kingdom?
no, if Kingdom's probably 4. Kingdom's probably 4.
Okay.
Yeah, Kingdom's not quite 5, but
I respect that.
yeah. But yeah, Temple of Doom ended up at number 4. Still really enjoy watching it though. What is your number 4?
This was really, really, really hard. I thought I knew what my number 4 choice was going to be, even before seeing Dial of Destiny.
Right.
But after this entire conversation that we've been having, I think my thoughts may have changed because it allowed me to rethink about the franchise. So right now, and this could change, people, this could change, but number 4 for me is Indiana Jones and the Temple of Doom.
Okay.
As much as I enjoy the roller coaster aesthetic and how bold and fresh it goes,
yeah,
in contrast to Raiders of the Lost Ark, I don't think Indiana Jones' relationship to Short Round and Willie is as strong as, his father or Marion or I'm still debating about Helena. Helena. But
right.
I just think Temple of Doom is the roller coaster experience. You don't need to think about it. You could just watch it.
Yeah.
And just have fun. I'm the type of guy who likes unraveling the layers of movies. And there isn't that much to unravel with Temple of Doom, even though it's cool. It's a fun movie.
Yes.
And it still has one of the best action sequences out of all 5 Indiana Jones films.
For sure.
Which is the minecart chase.
Yep.
So this may go back to number 3. But as of right now, number 4 is Indiana Jones and the Temple of Doom.
Okay. Excellent. All right, moving on to our number 3 selections. I'm even now debating in my mind. I'm like, is that my number 3 or is it my number 2? Right now I have at number 3, Indiana Jones and the Dial of Destiny. I've only seen it once. On rewatch, if it holds up, it may take that number 2 spot because it is very close with my number 2. But as of now, I have Dial of Destiny there. Just a perfect send-off for the character. Great new characters introduced, great villain. Yeah, it's hard to ask for more from a finale of a great character. I mean, I got everything I wanted out of this movie, really. So that's why I have it at number 3. Ben, what do you have at your number 3?
Number 3 is Indiana Jones and the Dial of Destiny.
Okay, great.
And it's because of how in-depth the theme is in terms of time, making your mark on history, your legacy, even reflecting on your life. I love how this movie just reflects on all of his previous adventures, even Kingdom of the Crystal Skull.
Yes.
So collectively, you think of each film as 5 fingers, you wrap them together, it makes one powerful punch.
There you go.
That's the best way to describe Indiana Jones, the entire franchise. So I love the Dial of Destiny. The only problem with this movie is the pacing.
Sure.
My only problem with this movie is the pacing. Yeah, it used to be other things, but the more I think about it, this is a story about Indy becoming Indy again. That's what it's about.
Yeah.
Not just about him going on one last adventure. It's about him becoming Indy again.
Yes.
So when it opens up, it doesn't have the tropes.
Yeah.
Because Indy isn't Indy. Once Indy starts acting like Indy, that's when the map shows up. That's when the color and the vibrant action shows up, and the theme. Once the theme starts playing, and you see that Indy's finally acting like Indy again. I think that's what James Mangold was trying to do, and I hope I'm correct.
Yeah.
But as of right now, great prologue, great theme. The ending just, you just feel it. If you're a big fan of Raiders like I am, you just feel it at the end of that movie. So as of right now, number 3 is Indiana Jones and the Dial of Destiny.
Excellent choice. All right, on to our number 2s. My number 2 is Indiana Jones and the Last Crusade. This is a great adventure movie, a great action movie. Another one where we get more into Indy's character and his backstory, his family. It's just super well made, so fun, has great comedy, great action scenes. That tank sequence is just one all-timer. Really great moments between Harrison Ford and Sean Connery. They play off each other so well. And just a really fun romp. I mean, from beginning to end, it does not stop moving. And getting that great opening scene too with River Phoenix. I can't talk highly enough of him. Another actor that was gone too soon, because he really delivers an excellent performance in that opening sequence. So yeah, big fan of Last Crusade. This one is my dad's favorite. And so that is why it is high on my list as well, because we both enjoy that one. So what do you have at your number 2?
Just so you know, guys, I am not copying from Cameron.
We didn't talk to each other beforehand.
We didn't even talk at all. I mean, yes, we talked about when we went to go see Dial of Destiny, but other than that, we never talked about our ranking of Indiana Jones. At least I don't think we did. Maybe we did years ago, but I promise you, we're not copying. Okay, so for number 2, my favorite movie is my favorite number 2 movie of the franchise is Indiana Jones and The Last Crusade. And the only problem I have with that movie is how familiar it is to Raiders of the Lost Ark. But other than that, I think this movie has a lot of heart, a lot of comedy. I love how they use Sala and Marcus Brody during those comedic moments. The dynamic between Harrison Ford and Sean Connery playing father and son was great. That's what made the movie. And the way it all just wraps up by the end. This could have been the ending to Indiana Jones, and I think it is the best ending to Indiana Jones. When thinking about it, even though I like how Dial of Destiny wraps up things, I do like Last Crusade. It's still a powerful Indiana Jones movie, the most emotional Indiana Jones movie, filled with a lot of action set pieces. The prologue is good too with River Phoenix. I don't think I ever talked about River Phoenix. River Phoenix, rest in peace. I still need to see this film that he did with Harrison Ford, Mosquito Coast. I still have not seen it.
Good.
But I heard things about it. But yeah, Last Crusade is number 2.
Awesome. Great pick. Yeah. All right, folks, we're at our number 1 Indiana Jones movie. And that, of course, is my favorite film of all time, Raiders of the Lost Ark. I've talked about this movie so many times on the podcast, but look, it's just a perfect movie. Everything I could want in a film is here, from great cinematography to editing to score, action, cast, direction, writing. I mean, it's all there. It's all comes together in a way that few movies do. It's really just a thrilling adventure film, one I can watch anytime, one that, I'll continue to watch for many years to come and always get something out of, and I'm always finding new things about it that I like certain transition shots or, just subtle performance things that I'll notice. There's so much here. So yeah, that had to be my number 1. Any fan of the podcast knows, not surprised at all. So Ben, give us your number 1.
Once again, I did not copy from Cameron, but my favorite Indiana Jones movie, as well as my favorite movie of all time, as of now. Things can change because films are subjective and my opinions for movies constantly change. It's Raiders of the Lost Ark. It is the action and adventure film that balances genre, story, impact in such a powerful way. And it's still timeless to this day. I don't think anything about that film is outdated. If you're watching it now, I think if you're a newcomer, you'd still have a blast. Unless you're a big fan of Twilight and only think of Twilight all day.
Right. Or if you like tons of CGI.
If you're not used to action and adventure films, this may not be for you. But if you are in the mood of escapism, like Star Wars, I highly recommend Raiders of the Lost Ark. That is the Indiana Jones movie and always will be, to my eyes.
Totally agree. Excellent. Ben, it's been a pleasure. Thank you so much for joining us on this episode. Hope you had fun.
You're very welcome, Cameron. Thank you so much. I am so happy that the very first episode I get to guest star with you is about Indiana Jones.
Yes.
I can't think of a better way to dive into the real world madness.
Awesome. Yeah, it worked out perfectly. I'm super glad to have you. Can't wait for you to come back. We'll have to plan on the next episode soon.
Definitely.
We will leave a link below to Ben's Letterboxd. He's on Letterboxd now. I finally got him on there. So you guys can follow him there. All the links again to our social media sites are in the description below as well. We're on Twitter, Facebook, Instagram. Follow us there. Be on the lookout for new videos coming every week. Next week, the podcast is all about our favorite directorial debuts. Bert and Josh are going to join us for that one. That should be a lot of fun, a very interesting topic. Thanks again. Yeah, it should be fun. Thanks again for joining us. Make sure you leave a comment below with your ranking of the Indy movies. Let us know if you saw Dial of Destiny. What did you think? Hit the like button, hit subscribe, hit the bell so you get notified of all our videos. And we'll see you next time right here on The Real World.